Good morning, guys, and welcome back to Grade 9 Science in the Optics Unit. Today we are going to be looking at the Explore Learning Gizmo on senses. Before we get started with that, just again another reminder of how this is going to work for the next week and a bit. Today we will start out with Activity A for the Gizmo. I'm just going to share my screen to you here now. And we should have Activity A completed by the end of today's class. For next class, we'll have another session where we can talk about Activity A and lead into Activity B, as well as a little lesson on corrective lenses and an ed puzzle for you guys to complete. Okay. After we've done this senses gizmo and the corrective lenses lessons, we will move into the introduction of the summative assignments. We talked a little bit about the unit test. We will not have a unit test as promised. Rather, we will have an online assignment. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we'll have a review Zoom session for you guys on Wednesday the 22nd. Then on Friday the 24th, you guys will be writing your in-class assignment. It will be due on Saturday at 3 p.m. Okay, so on today's date, there is a OneNote document you need to download called Gizmo Senses. Please go ahead and download that Gizmo. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to make sure we've got that up before I move forward. So you're going to download Gizmo Senses.
Mr. Gay.
Yep.
What do I search up on Google, like, to go to the, like, to find all the gizmos? What's the like?
You just go to explorelearning.com.
Thank you.
Should we put
Okay,
the
hands up if
gizmo?
we need more time. No, we're good to go? Awesome.
Should
Okay.
we put the gizmo into our optics online notebook?
Yep, you should.
Okay.
100%. Good question.
Is this found on the science or like our feed?
Yeah, I thought I made that clear. Yeah, sorry. It's in today's date on the planner. You have to download that and then put it into the planner or put it into your OneNote. Okay.
All right, yeah.
Okay. Good to go? All right, I'm going to start, guys. So today's Gizmo worksheet looks like this. There's, as always, a list of vocabulary terms that we need to know, some prior knowledge questions, and a warm-up to get us used to the Gizmo. I will work through all of these things with you guys and then go through the rules of what you're going to be doing for Activity A and then send you off on your way to explore. Okay. This is the first time I've done this Gizmo with the class, so I'm pretty excited to give it a try. It is pretty complicated stuff, and there's some big words that we're going to look at before we even get started here today. So, unfortunately, Zoom kind of covers the top corner of my, there we go. Okay. So some vocab that we need to know ahead of this Gizmo. Auditory cortex. The auditory cortex is a section of the brain that receives and processes auditory or sound signals from the ear. So it's a part of your brain that takes the signals from your ears. Okay, that's really all we need to know. The auditory cortex is located on the temporal lobe of the cerebral cortex, which is on the outer side of the brain. It's just above the ears, and we're going to see a diagram of that in the senses gizmo. The auditory nerve is a nerve that connects sound signals and carries them from the cochlea, which is in your ear, to the brain. The cerebrum, that's part of your brain. The cerebrum is responsible for the integration of complex neural signals and the initiation and coordination of voluntary activity in the body. So voluntary responses, not involuntary activities like breathing. Okay, the cone. A cone is a light-sensing photoreceptor cell embedded in the retina at the back of the eye in vertebrates, like us, we're vertebrates. Cones are responsible for colored vision. So humans have 3 types of cones that respond to red, green, and blue light, which are the 3 primary colors that we know of from this optics unit. Cones work best in bright light. Okay, now that's all we're really worrying about for us for this gizmo, because we're not going to worry about the tongue and other senses. We're mostly focusing on our optic nerve and how we as humans can see light and hear sound, because we're focusing on the electromagnetic properties. So we also need to be familiar with the optic nerve, a nerve behind the eye that transmits signals from the retina to the brain. Rods. Rods work much like cones. They are also light-sensing photoreceptor cells embedded in the retina, also in the back of the eye. Rod cells are more sensitive to dim light than cone cells, though. And rod cells cannot distinguish between different colors of light. Okay? So that pretty much covers it for this gizmo. The last thing we need to be aware of is the visual cortex, which is a section of the brain that receives and processes visual light from the eye. Visual cortex is located in the occipital lobe of the cerebral cortex, which is on the back of the brain. And this will be made available to you at the end of class if you need the definitions. Okay, moving on to the worksheet and the gizmo itself. So, prior knowledge questions. What are different types of information that your body can detect from the outside world? Think about that. What are some different types of information that your body can detect from outside the world? Feel free to raise your hand and I can call on you, or if you want to, you can just shout it out. What are some different types of information that your body can detect from the outside world? No wrong answers here, guys. Take some guesses.
Temperature.
Sure, temperature. Yeah. What else?
How bright it is.
Brightness. Yeah. Heat.
Sound.
Sound.
Feel.
Feel. Yeah.
Colors.
Sorry? You hear colors?
Yeah.
Colors? Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Colors.
Like vision, like when you look at things.
Sure. Yeah.
Texture.
Smell.
Texture. Smell. There we go. Yeah, for sure.
Sound.
Sound. Anything else? It's a pretty good list, guys. Yeah, so for sure, there's a bunch of different types of information that your body can detect from the outside world, for sure. Now, when you answered that question, I want you to write down 3. Okay, write down 3 different types of information. Now, tell me, which organ does your body use to collect the information described in the last question? Think about it in your head and write it down. Now, gentlemen, when we think about these organs, think about each of those 3 sentences that you wrote, the 3 senses that you wrote down in question 1. How many different organs did you have to write down for 3 different senses?
3.
3. Yeah, typically the human body has a different organ for each of these senses. Now, we went through a lot of different definitions in the beginning of our lesson. Why do we think that each sense has its own particular organ?
Because it's like defined to like be like matched with that.
Yeah, that's great. I think, Lyons, what you're hinting at there is the theory of evolution, and that these specific organs have a very specific role within the body that's been fine-tuned over time. So yeah, the ear is the expert at hearing in the body. The tongue is the expert at tasting. The eyes are the experts for vision, right? Every organ has its own individual role that contributes to I guess, the mastery of what is the human body. So it's a pretty cool way to look at life and us as humans, for sure. Okay, time for the gizmo warm-up. So we're going to open up the gizmo now on your computers. You can feel free to minimize my screen and open up your gizmo and get started if you'd like. Stimuli are changes inside or outside the body that cause some form of response. In the senses gizmo, you'll explore how different sense organs detect stimuli from the environment and send messages about that stimulus to the brain. On the neural pathways tab in the gizmo, it says to drag the apple slice into the white stimulus box and drag the eye into the sense organ box. Click play and record your observations.
Wait,
So-
where is the gizmo? How do you find it?
So in the
Just search it
gizmo,
up.
you go to Explore Learning. You go to your classroom, right?
Well,
So go to My Classes, and it'll be in your class for you. So I'm going to open up the gizmo now. Okay, it says to drag the apple into the stimulus, and it says to drag the eye into the sense organ.
Mr. Gate,
Pathways tab.
Mr. Gate, where is it?
What's the question?
Where's the gizmo again? Sorry.
ExploreLearning.com.
Okay.
you move your mic a bit away from your mouth.
Mr. Gate,
Yeah.
when mine shows up, mine says grade 9 science 4.
Yeah.
Which one is this? Like which? Oh, never mind. We're good.
Census. It's called Census. Yeah.
All right.
All good?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So now it asks us to click play and record our observations. Let me see. Let's try that again. We've got our eye organ, and then there's some sort of light going through this long tube towards the back of the brain to an area labeled the visual cortex. And it says light receptors, rods and cones, at the back of the eye are activated by incoming light. Then the nerve cells, so that must be what this tube is. It's a connectivity of nerve cells, transmit light signals to the brain. The visual cortex in the brain processes the signals to create the perception of vision. Okay, so it creates the image in our minds. So in your OneNote, you're going to record your observations of what you saw here. How do you know that the eye was able to sense the apple? What did you see?
The eye was moving.
Sure. Yeah, the eye was look, an apple. Yeah, the eye was.
Wouldn't it be the eye sent like a
It went to the visual cortex.
Yeah,
it like sent
that
a
little-
signal to the
Yeah, the
visual?
little signal. That little bulb of light there.
Tube call?
Yes, it sent a signal
Nice.
to the visual cortex so we could see it.
So to the visual cortex, a section of the brain that receives and processes light. Okay. The optic nerve is a nerve behind the eye that transmits signals from the retina to the brain. Rods, cells more sensitive to dim light, cannot distinguish between colors of light. Cones, a light sensing cell embedded in the retina in the back of the brain, responsible for color vision? Let's replay this one more time. Let's use the scientific terminology here to describe what's happening. So, what do we have here? What's detecting the apple?
Our eye.
Our body. But what part of our body?
The
The
eye.
retina,
What part of our eye?
the cone,
A cone, for sure. The cones, and what else?
Rods.
The rods and cones, right. And what is this neural pathway called here?
A neutral pathway.
I guess it's neutral because the eye does see all things equally.
The optic nerve.
It's the optic nerve, absolutely. And what's this big gray squishy sponge-like thing that we're looking at here?
Brain.
That's the brain. And at the back of the brain, we've got an area highlighted in green with a little arrow.
Visual
What's that
cortex.
area called?
Visual cortex.
And what's that responsible for?
For your sight.
Yeah, it's what creates the image from that neurosensory stimuli of light. Perfect.
You're saying blind people don't have a visual cortex?
They might have difficulties either focusing the light in the eye, which we're going to talk about corrective lenses, or they could have some sort of fusion in their optic nerve, or maybe some detachment of the retina. There could be any number of reasons why they're blind, but typically no, not because they don't have a visual cortex in their brain. It's more an issue with the pathway of transmission. Okay. Question 3 in the warm-up says, the neural pathway represents the nerves that connect the sense organ to the brain. What happens along the neural pathway when the eye sees the apple? What happens there?
It like starts to glow.
It starts to glow because nerve cells are transmitting the light signals to the brain.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's our gizmo warm-up. Let's talk about activity A, and then I'll send you guys on your way to work away on it. So the brain is organized into different regions that have different functions. Most of the sensory information is processed in the cerebrum, the wrinkly area that forms the outer part of the brain, and the nerve cells that connect the sense organ to the part of the brain responsible for that sense is called the neural pathway. What happens? This is the essential question of activity A. What happens when the stimuli are detected by sense organs? So we're going to play around with some different organs here just to get a general idea of what the brain does and how it works. So in order to be able to navigate through here, we need to know how the gizmo works. We should be a little bit used to gizmos by now, but if you're not, that's okay. If you want to reset, you click the reset button there. You can drag and drop different organs into the sense organ box. That was actually kind of comical, seeing the tongue. But it's going to show you the process in the pathway. So you can do this with all different objects, different stimuli, or
You can make it eat a
By
ball
licking the dog.
you want me to lick the dog?
Yep.
or lick the ball.
Ew, no thank you, didn't want to.
Eat the ball. Or eat the speaker.
That's so
What? That
weird.
looks so weird.
That's kind of weird. Okay, so we know how to navigate through the
Feels
gizmo.
furry.
Sorry?
Said feels furry.
Feels furry, yeah. So we know how to navigate through the gizmo now. I'm just going to have you guys take a look at question number 4 here. You do need to label these areas of the brain. Okay, so when you're going through the gizmo, let's not just focus on the fact that the dog feels furry. We need to look at which brain region did that neurosensory information get passed to from the neural pathway into the brain. Okay?
Somatosensory cortex.
Somatosensory cortex. Yes, absolutely.
I don't know how to say that.
What would happen if you put the dog in the tongue?
It said
It
no.
doesn't like it. It says no, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So
Probably
it gives
not
you some
supposed to be
specific
dogs.
combinations of organs and stimuli to use. There are 6 questions, and you guys have the rest of this period to work through that.
That's my secret.
Wait, Mr. Gay, are we finishing the whole thing today?
Just activity A.
Okay.
Activity A is due for homework. Okay, gents?
Okay. Yep.
All right.
Mr. Gate,
Yeah.
I need to stay by and talk to you about something.
Okay.
Okay. Bye,
All right,
Mr.
gentlemen.
Gate. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks, Mr. Gate. Have a good weekend.
Thank
Have a
you.
great weekend, guys.
Mr. Gate.
So it's
Thank
due
you. Have a good
for
weekend.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend, guys.
next class, or is it due 24 hours
We have
from
to
now?
submit it anywhere. Just
You
leave it in
next
med
class.
school.
No, you don't need to submit it. No.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Mr. Gate, can you please take out the overdue for a puzzle?
Yeah. Did you get it done?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.